Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Pangolin podcast. I'm your host, Toby. Thank you very much for joining me. In each episode, I've invited a professional wildlife photographer to imagine themselves in a remote location. And along with their camera gear, they're allowed to bring 5 photographs to hang on the wall of their humble dwelling. 4 of these must be their own, and the final image is one they admire by another photographer. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the images as we talk, but for audio listeners on other platforms, there is a link in the description to a gallery. Thank you to everyone who's watched and commented on our first 4 episodes. We are delighted that you're enjoying them. I have noticed, however, that quite a few of you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, so please do so and turn on the notifications, otherwise you might miss one. On today's show,
you have to be there. You can't just set things up with, for example, sensors and stuff. You have to be hands-on. Whenever a hyena drags away your gear, you've got to recover it again. I've lost so much gear in my life before because of animals, but hey, that's the game of the game.
My guest today is a highly respected wildlife photographer and explorer, renowned for his extraordinary ability to capture Africa's most dramatic and intimate moments. He has spent years, often months at a time, immersing himself in the wild landscapes of the continent, especially the Kalahari, and as a result has published several acclaimed photographic books, including Planet Okavango, Once Upon a Time, and The Dark Side of the Kalahari. His passion for storytelling and dedication to sharing the beauty and the challenges faced by Africa's wildlife make him a truly inspiring guest. So, welcome to the show, Hannes Lochner.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Well, where do we find you today, Hannes? Unusually, you're not in a tent somewhere in the wilderness of Africa. Where are you today?
No, I'm actually enjoying the weather in South Africa, and I'm at home.
Excellent.
Not always at home, so it's great to be home.
And when's your next trip plan? When are you off again next?
I'm flying actually tomorrow morning to the Kalahari. I'm there for a week and then off to another back-to-back safari.
It's a busy safari season, isn't it? And we asked you to select some images. These are the images which will be on your humble dwelling. I know you've had several humble dwellings in the past. You are renowned for spending a lot of time out in the field photographing, months at a time. So without further ado, shall we start with your first image, please?
This was taken on the Kwai River in the Okavango Delta, and it was basically a photograph at night where 2 lions are sitting busy eating a hippo, while another hippo is coming out of the river from the side with the Milky Way in the background. One of the things I love doing is night photography because golden hours is so short. So night photography is basically the whole night. You get 8 hours to work in, and it gives you time. And I always try, when it comes to star photography, to try to get on one raw file the final image. It's not a composite of a foreground and a background altogether. Obviously, it's a lot easier when you do a composite because you just take 2 different photographs. But to try to get everything together in one image, that's always the challenge. And these was luckily taken long before AI existed, so it's the real deal. So
it's the real thing, isn't it? This isn't some prompt that you put into ChatGPT. Tell us how you took the photograph.
Well, basically, I was busy scouting for a new project of us locations, and this was actually on the Kwai River. I bumped into 2 hippos that was fighting. The one killed the other one, and there was also crocodiles in the river, so it was busy chomping away. The hippos has got this strange behavior where when something dead floats down the river, they always swim towards it and bite on it and lick it and stuff. And that's exactly what happened that afternoon. So I was sitting actually basically photographing crocodiles eating a hippo carcass. And then later that evening, at sunset, hyenas actually walked into the river and dragged the whole carcass out. And then this was probably taken about 12 at night. So I basically spent the whole night there. And then I saw lions that were roaring on the other side of the river. And then they swam across it. And then they basically just arrived at the scene. The hyenas ran away and the lions started eating. And basically I set up, because the Milky Way was rising. It was a beautiful portrait and I could see the possibilities and everything. I like it because it's basically all 3 subjects is looking at me, basically posing under the Milky Way. But just after the photograph was taken, the lions was chased around by the hippos. So that was quite entertaining. But this was for me just a portrait, and it tells a story at the end of the day as well. So
what was the technique you used? Obviously, you've got a longer exposure for the Milky Way. and then you lit up the lions and the hippo briefly.
It's basically just a flash, but I don't do direct flash because certain animals don't like it. Lions don't really care, but when you work with nocturnal animals, with the technology of today, and even when this photograph was taken in, I think it was 2016, you could go really high with your ISO levels and stuff. So I had a controller that basically from the camera talking to 3 light sources, which was basically, because I'm taking the photograph with a 14mm lens and it's very wide. So if you're going to use one light source, you'll just get an arch of light before you, and the corners will be dark. So you need 3 different strobes to be able to lit up the corners as well. And they will obviously be different strengths because they need to light further in the distance. And the front is obviously a little bit less strong because I'm sitting basically 2.5 meters from the lions eating the hippo. It's very close. You're shooting at a very high ISO, so you don't need a lot of light to be able to lit up the foreground in front of you. When you take the photograph, the foreground is already taken. So that happens within the first half a second. So I'm in the car and I'm in a mounting system on the side of the car. So you have to sit still, otherwise your stars will not be stars, it will be lines because there will be movement. But the foreground, doesn't matter what happens in the foreground, the photograph is already captured. The lions can walk, the hippos can run, nothing will change in the foreground. And that's where you get the Milky Way with the next 30 seconds. So it's a little bit technical, but I mean, the more you do it, it becomes second nature. And that's why I went back. I was really hoping that there will be either hyenas or anything coming, and maybe there can be some interaction later at night.
Well, that's why I like is the fact that you say, you know, the golden hour is so brief and fleeting, but then you've got the whole night to work. And this was in 2016. Which book was this that you were shooting?
This was in Planet Okavango.
Planet Okavango was a real labor of love, wasn't it? That was several years in the making.
Yeah, 2.5 years. We live in about 4 kilometers outside of Third Bridge in the Maremi Game Reserve. So basically in the heart of the Okavango.
This is the dream that everybody wants to live. They all have ambitions of being able to live in their humble dwelling. I mean, you of all people have actually lived in the humble dwelling, haven't we? So I know with the BBC, when they make Planet Earth and things, they reckon they take about a month to get 5 minutes of footage for Planet Earth. What would you say? I mean, out of all the time that you spent, do you have a rate at which you hope to be able to get the keeper images, or do you just think, I'm going to do this for as long as it takes?
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about money, because staying in a place for 2.5 years, getting the photographic permits and everything is very costly. So you've got to be self-sufficient for basically 2 years. You've got to have an income in the back and 5 tanks of diesel every month. And you've got to put the time in every day. You're up with the sparrows and working at night. And, you know, when we were working there, we still had our Land Rover, and Land Rover needs a little bit more love than any other vehicle. So you need a lot of parts. So you need an airstrip close by. Luckily, there was a few airstrips we can drive to. Took us about an hour. And then whenever there's a problem, you got to put the part in and off you go again. It's not for the faint-hearted to do this kind of seclusion for 2.5 years. Like you said, it's a labor of love kind of thing.
It's a commitment, isn't it? I think that there must have been lots of days of frustration. So what time in your life did you decide that this was going to be your full-time job? When you decided wildlife photography, making these amazing books, leading tours and things like that, when was the moment that you decided, and what took you to that moment? Was there a moment?
Well, I wanted to do it since I was a student. You know, it was always the passion of mine to do something in the wildlife industry. But to be able to disappear for 2 years to do a project, you got to have the gear, the proper gear, and you got to have the vehicles. You got to have the money to disappear. I wanted to do it at the age of about 24, 25, but I wasn't financially there yet. So it took another basically 10 years to be able to get there. So I think around 34 years old, I was at the right place at the right time. I can basically sold the house to be able to disappear for 2.5 years to do my first project, and I left to the Kalahari. Yeah. I got stuck for 6 years.
It got stuck in the Kalahari. There's worse places to be stuck. And now you're going back.
I'm going back. I always go back. Yeah. Kalahari always delivers.
You share this with Noah, who is your partner, your filmmaking partner, your spouse, your support?
My everything, yeah. I met her in the Kalahari, actually.
You met her in the Kalahari. See, well, there we go. So when you say the Kalahari always produces, it's actually produced more than just images for you, hasn't it?
Exactly, yeah. 15 years ago, yeah.
15 years ago. Well, that makes a difference, doesn't it? On those lonely evenings when you're sitting there and nothing's come good, at least you've got somebody to moan at, I suppose. And what is it about the Kalahari? You know, you obviously have done several books about the Kalahari. What is it about the Kalahari specifically that keeps you going back?
Toby, it's a difficult question. Well, it's an easy question for me, but I think it's difficult. A lot of people ask me, why do you go there? Because it's just you know, if they start, for example, in a place like the Serengeti or the Masai Mara, the Kruger, the diversity is just so much more in certain areas in the world. And if you go to the Kalahari, it's an arid region, which basically means it's cat-orientated and predator-orientated. There's a lot of interaction between species, number one. Number two is there is nothing more beautiful than a black maned Kalahari lying on a red dune. The leopards there is just wild. I mean, I remember my publisher asked me, why on earth did you do a leopard project in the Kalahari? It's one of the most difficult places in the world to actually try to follow a leopard. And you did it for 2.5 years. Why didn't you just do it in Sabi Sands where you see leopards on every drive? But I mean, my answer was very simple. It's just that no one's ever done it before, number one. And number two is the leopards in the Kalahari they're still, for me, wild kind of thing. They don't get habituated, really. And like I think with the brown hyenas and the cheetahs and the leopards and the wildcat and the caracal, you get all these different cats there. There's always something else to entertain you. I mean, at the end of the day, you want everything to fall on your lap, or you want to really work for something. You know, I always like the challenge, and with Noah, obviously, the challenge became a lot easier. It was now 4 eyes instead of 2. And yeah, it was the company as well, you know, sitting on a bonnet of a Land Rover, having a rum and coke in those days, looking up the stars. Moments like those is what you look back into, and what basically makes a place special.
It makes you forget all the missed opportunities and the getting stuck and everything else that goes with it, all the things that don't work behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly. Those are the bits to remember. Okay, let's move on to your second image. Can you tell us a little bit about this image and why you chose it?
This was when my journey started, basically the first 2 years of my wildlife photography career. It was a moon moth, which landed on the side of an elephant. And it's a macro kind of image where you can just see the skin of the elephant and the moon moth with the shade. This was taken at a private game reserve in the Greater Kruger. It's a reserve called Makalali. They were doing elephant research at the time, and they were busy darting elephants, and the Lunar moth ended up on one of the elephants. So I was lucky to get this image, and that was actually the cover of my first publication called Colours of Southern Africa.
So it's a lunar moth. I'm not sure I've seen a lunar moth. So this was an elephant that had been darted. Was it being translocated, or was it up and about? What's the story about
They were doing contraception, and they were busy darting all the females to prevent them to get pregnant. They basically used contraception in those days for controlling numbers, I think.
I love the fact that it's very obviously identifiable as being an elephant, because very, very, very little has a skin texture that's similar to an elephant. So what were you thinking here? Were you just photographing the elephant skin and then happened to see the moth, or did it chance upon the elephant? How did it come about? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was running through the Mopani. It ended up on there. It was absolutely chaos because, I mean, you can imagine that the rest of the herd is trying to protect this female. No one can get close to, the vets can't get close or anything. And that's just havoc. And this moth ended up on top of the ellie. It was when my journey actually started. So this is the day that I decided I'm actually leaving for the bush for a couple of years. For me, it was a striking front cover of a book. I like interesting front covers. I like front covers that tell stories.
So you've published several books. That must be an agonizing decision to decide what is the front cover. I mean, that can have a huge impact, can't it, on the potential sales? Where do you start to begin to pull the book together? Do you have a book in mind and then take photographs, or do you then format the book as the photographs come along?
Well, I think with the first publication, it was just me getting out in the bush and trying to create something at the end of the day after 2.5 years. So you basically accumulate as much material as you can over a certain time and pick and choose your best options. And trying to choose a cover is always a pain, because if you look at all the covers of wildlife books out there, there's a lot of the iconic big five. They pick and choose one of those, but I don't always go for the obvious kind of thing. In my first book, it was a moth. I mean, the the last thing that I would have thought I'm going to have on a front cover is a moth. And then you get the Planet of Van Gogh, which was an elephant trunk just throwing mud. My background is actually, me and Noah both, we graphic designers. So a lot of time and stuff goes in. It's not just picking a front cover for that matter. It can also be...
Okay. And drag that one in, and there we go. That'll do. That's fine. Let's move on to the next task for the day. Yeah. I mean, we always talk, and we've spoken with several people on this podcast about the fact that, there's no real money left in stock imagery. Is publishing books the last sort of bastion of retaining ownership of your images and selling them and commercializing your photographs? It's very difficult to copy a physical book in the digital world, would you say?
Yeah, look, I think it's also a personal journey. It's like getting a degree at the university. You work 4 years with something and then you get rewarded. I love setting out goals, and I like to make my deadlines and give myself, right, 2 years time, this is what's going to happen, and this is the kind of imagery that I want. So I think as long as it's there, I'll probably do it. But I think we've slowly but surely, where I used to do every 2 years a book, now it's every 4 or 5 years, So I think if I'm going to go that route again, I think it will probably be the last.
I mean, just as a side note, we'll leave links in the description down below so that you can go to Hannes's website. You can see his books there. Maybe ask him nicely. Maybe he'll sign one for you. Who knows? Tell him we sent you. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to chat to Hannes about his third image. Welcome back to part 2 of the Pangolin podcast with my guest today, Mr. Hannes Lochner. Hannes and I are now going to talk about his third image. Hannes, would you describe this for the listeners, please, and tell us a little bit about this? This is actually one of my favorite shots of yours, just saying.
Thanks, Toby. This is of a lion sleeping in long grass in the Kalahari desert, oblivious to the tornado that actually appeared in the back with lightning and everything, and he just slept through the whole storm. Although it looks far, but it was actually very close because it was taken with a wide angle shot. So you get the lion in the long yellow grass and fast asleep with lightning bolts and twisting and thunder and everything going on crazy in the backdrop. And he's just sleeping through everything.
Not bothered about this massive storm that's going on behind me. Now, the reason I quote you, I think you did a talk for us back at the Cape Town Photo Club, where we talked about this image. And what really struck home is the fact that you were the first person I'd really heard talking about how much you enjoy photographing during green season, rainy season, emerald season, whatever it's called. But this embodies that whole philosophy, doesn't it?
Yeah, so this was at the end of the rainy season in the Kalahari. So the grass is not as green as it should be at that time of the year, but it was a very dry year. But you still get these incredible lightning storms, and it usually starts off with a big dust storm, and then the lightning comes, and then after the lightning, the rain comes. I knew there was a storm coming, and I knew where the lion was sleeping, so I just tried to put A and B together, where I mount a camera on the side of the vehicle, slow shutter, and a very soft full flash in the foreground, and keep the shutter open for the lightning bolt. It wasn't open that long. It was only open about a second or so. And I kept my finger basically down because the lightning bolts were coming. So basically just try to get a bolt on the same image. So again, the foreground, background, one raw file.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because most people, they come on Africa and say, I want to see a lion. And this is basically what lions do for most of the time. They're just lying down on the ground doing nothing. And so to try and make that interesting, this is anybody watching, this is how you make a lion sleeping interesting. You just got to wait for a massive thunderstorm.
Exactly. But also this time of the year is great because every afternoon there might be a rainstorm or a thunderstorm. You just hang around these cats, they will be sleeping. But when those things come, you get dust storms, you get rain. Probably 90% of the time it doesn't, but that's where you have to sit sometimes and wait for it. Yeah.
This is the only time where a lion's natural behavior becomes quite compliant. And you just go, well, he's not moving. That's fine. All I have to do now is line up a thunderstrike. So you said you were just waiting. Were you just sort of going, okay, I'm going to go, and hopefully a lightning strike will come? Did you see it building up or something like that? Do you think, okay, it's coming?
Oh, there was definitely going to be. I've got a whole lot of the images with different lightning bolts. This one was my preferred one because you can see there's like circles around the bolt, and that actually formed a twister all the way down with more bolts on the right-hand side.
It's a beautiful photograph. Again, completely different and completely original, which is words that I would use to describe your imagery. Right, so we are now on to Hannes's final image. Hannes, this is an extraordinary photograph. Can you please just explain to people what's going on here?
It's basically a spotted genet coming in for a drink of water with carp fish swimming underneath it. It's a 50-50 shot where you can see the fish and then what's happening on top of the water. It's basically a photograph at night, and this was quite a lot of planning involved here, and this took me quite a few years to perfect.
I don't know if you saw Janine's episode when she came on here, but she featured one of your images, which was the blue image with the elephant silhouetted through the leaf. And the
Correct.
reason she chose that is to remind herself to visualize an image and have that in the back of your mind so that when the situation arises or the opportunity arises, you go for it. Now, this is really your trademark because you invest a lot of time and energy in planning these shots, thinking about these shots and trying to figure out how to get them. And this is a perfect example of that. So can you tell me how you did this?
I basically had this idea when I was working with the leopards in the Kalahari, and obviously also tried this, but the water holes and the water is very dirty over there. So you're obviously not going to get the results you're after. This was taken, there's a certain water hole in the area that I live. It's on a private game reserve here in the Greater Kruger. And the water hole was clean because it's not the rainy season, which basically means everything settles at the bottom. You can see all the foliage. And hopefully, if I'm lucky, I'm going to get a few of the carps and the fish because it was quite shallow as well. But I could mount a waterproof kind of box and I had to weigh it down and all these kind of things. So position it basically to where I get a 50-50 kind of view. So this was a waterhole where in the dry season, you can see from the tracks in the riverbed, there's civets coming down, there's genets, there's porcupines. I was hoping basically for a leopard, but obviously this is a smaller cat. So there's a light actually underneath the camera and there's a light behind the camera. And there's also 3 strobes basically in different angles because this was shot with an 11mm wide lens. So it's extremely wide. So I'm quite a distance away and basically can see what's coming to the water. Now, there's 2 different ways of doing this. You can either work on a remote. So whenever something comes to the water, you can take a photograph with the remote. Or you can have it obviously where you have a sensor. So whenever there's movement in front of the camera, sensor goes off, take the photograph. I like to basically be a little bit more involved and use the remote controls because then I know exactly when he points his head down, poof, I take a photograph and I keep the finger down. Now, this is at a very low shutter speed as well. It was lit up in the foreground, so it was for about 60th of a second. So this is a thing I took in COVID. So I was lucky I got stuck actually on a game reserve in COVID. So I can trial and error basically every single night, which we did. And half the gear was dragged away and stuff like that. So it's not an easy kind of thing. You have to be there. You can't just set things up with, for example, sensors and stuff. You have to be hands-on. Whenever a hyena drags away your gear, you got to sort of try to recover it again, so.
Occupational hazard, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I've lost so much gear in my life before because of animals. But, hey, that's the game of the game. And I got the image I was after, and it was the front cover of my latest book.
I'm really glad that it's a genet because it's one of the less celebrated animals that you get photographs
Exactly.
of. What I really like about this is there's a bit of an optical illusion where it looks like there's a world underneath where the genet lives, and the genet's looking at you, and he also doesn't believe that there's a world underneath or something like that, which is going on. But what I really like is the fact that you must have sat there, waited for a subject, taken a photograph going, well, the genet's there, but you had no idea if there were fish in that photograph until you got the camera.
No, that was sort of just holding thumbs kind of until the next day.
So yeah, just to clarify, you weren't sitting in a water hole at night where there's leopards going around the place. No, you're not that daft. We're just going to sit nearby, which must have been lots of long evenings.
There's easier ways of doing this. And this, you need to control the light very carefully. And yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. I'm not done with this technique, actually. I'm actually have quite a long list of things that I'm still doing with this kind of technique. But that will come in good time. Yeah.
So your pre-visualization, what's the image? What's the one that's yet to evade you that's been sitting on your list for so long? Or are you not going to, you probably aren't going to tell me.
You'll see it in my next book, I promise you.
Hopefully. Okay, tell me about the one that got away, that it was so close and you thought you had it and then something about it isn't quite right? Is it still on the list, or have you abandoned it?
No. It's, we as photographers, we miss so many images on every trip and on every project. You miss lots and lots of stuff. So I've learned very early in my career that you don't dwell on these things. You move on. Tomorrow's another day, and you focus on the things that you do get and actually can get. So I remember the first time I were experimenting with remote photography. It was when I was busy following the leopards, and I got all the gear now together, and I got all the remotes, and I set everything up. And I remember I set a camera up to the carcass of a springbok, one young leopard killed, and I was sitting about 400 meters away with the remote, and the leopard came and so I could see the bounce of the flash of the strobe goes off. So it means camera's taking photographs. What happened then was a brown hyena came, which is also quite a scarce animal. They both basically were standing right opposite each other, and they were eating on the carcass at the same time. And my flash, the strobes would just pop, 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 pop. So I knew, but what I didn't realize is when I set everything up is when I pressed the button, my lens at that time were refocusing every time, which basically means I forgot to put my lens on manual. I didn't do the focusing part correct. So that was the biggest probably mistake. So I got fantastic images. They were just very soft. So I had to delete basically, but then I fixed it and I went back again. But I did get images of the two animals again, but it wasn't where they were eating together. But, like I said, it's you have to learn at some point in your life, and you're going to make mistakes. And these things is good that it happens, because now I don't make these mistakes anymore.
So when you do these, I know you're an artist and you enjoy drawing and sketching and charcoal things like that. Do you often sketch out the ideas beforehand and sort of try to visualize all?
I got 2 books just for that. I have little comical kind of images that I write. I draw the picture and I explain it and I write the settings down. So I've got a book with hundreds of these things still in there. And it will happen, hopefully. And you'll be surprised actually how many of these things one can get if you know certain behaviors of certain species in certain areas at a certain time of the year. You can put these things together, and if you're going to go and spend a month there, you'll probably end up having one of those images, So it can be done. And people say you can't plan wildlife photography, but there is a lot of elements that one can plan. I mean, one of the biggest things I really wanted when I was in the Kalahari was I wanted lions in a rainstorm. It's one of the big things. And I was hoping that I can get also sun. When there's sun, when it's raining, you get these beautiful backlit water droplets. Now, me and Noah were driving in the north, and we saw a big storm coming where the lions were sleeping. So we just went to go and sit with the lions. 1 hour later, there was a big rainstorm. The sun came out, and I got the image I wanted. But I had that idea a few years earlier, and I drew the picture and I wrote it. But those elements only came together a few years later. So I get reminding myself, because I have this booklet, it keeps reminding me when I go, for example, I go and spend a month or 2 months or 6 months in a certain area, then I know exactly, what is the chances of certain images that I can get. So planning can very well help you a lot when it comes to wildlife photography.
So that would be a really good book. I'd like to have a look at the image on one side and the sketch on the other side. There you go. And then you can say, look, this isn't luck. This was planned. And then have a date. I did it this day. This is when I thought of it. Roll forward 9 years and I got it. It's a lesson in patience.
Yeah. I'll dot it down.
Thank you very much. All I want is a very small credit at the back, very small. Thank you very much to Toby German for this amazing idea. It's recorded, it's in perpetuity. Okay, listen, we've come to the end of all of your images, and we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to look at the image that's taken by another photographer that you admire. So we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to the final part of the Pangolin podcast with me, Toby German, and my guest today, Hannes Lochner. And this is the part of the show where we've invited Hannes to select an image taken by another photographer who he admires and he wished maybe he had taken himself. So, Hannes, please can you introduce the image, tell us a bit about the image and who took it?
This image was taken by Heinrich van den Berg. It is a motion pan image of a leopard where it's yawning with a dark backdrop later in the evening, and the spots becomes lines. It's basically a panning shot. I love motion shots, and on every safari when the light gets low and I don't want to up my eyes, so I just go and play around with motion shots, And one of the cats that's always been elusive when it comes to the perfect motion shot for that matter is a leopard. The great thing about a leopard is when the spots move, you get basically lines, but the head's always bopping with a cat, when it walks. And the only time it will actually, when you can get some sort of detail within the head or the eyes for that matter, you want that part sharp, is when it yawns. I've had it with lions, but I've never got it with a leopard, and leopard's obviously my favorite animal. So I've never got that shot, and Heinrich actually, with this image, he won the South African Wildlife Photographer of the Year. It was quite a while ago, about 12 years ago or something like that.
We'll get Heinrich on the podcast and we'll ask him himself. But that's even more remarkable then, because it's not even utilizing modern technology, which would help you, animal eye tracking and stuff like that. So it's an even more difficult shot to get. And also, I don't think very rarely have I seen a leopard or a lion walking along and yawning. Usually they're static and they yawn, aren't they?
You see this sometimes, but it's not a daily occurrence, and it's perfectly taken the photograph. The right speed, and it was just enough detail within the head and the tongue.
I love panning shots like this because they look like they're sort of watercolors, or they've been, painted rather than photographed. And they're incredibly difficult to take because you always miss it. You always miss everything, or some bit's in focus and it's the wrong bit.
Yeah.
But you must have seen lots and lots of panning shots like this one. So what is it that really draws your eye to this image, that really makes it stand out from the rest?
For me, it's always about that first impressions. The moment you've seen the photograph the first time, immediately it just wakens something in you. It just talks to you immediately, and it's that first kind of impression, emotion, it awakes. The market's so saturated at the moment. You really got to go out of your way to basically get your name out there. And I think when I started, I was still taking film in combination with digital because it just came on to the market and everything. But it was a little bit easier, I should say. Nowadays, every person out there can take an incredibly beautiful photograph. But when it comes to techniques like this photograph we're talking about, and for example, the one that we discussed earlier on, where 50-50 underwater and stuff, when it comes to that, then it moves into a sort of category where you need to know a lot more than just pressing a button. So you need to know the behavior, you need to know the different techniques. I think it's just that, for me personally, it's that first impression. It just immediately speaks to you.
The wow factor. There we go.
The wow factor.
No, it certainly is a very, very striking image. So we'll get Heinrich on the show, actually, because he's got some stunning images, and we can chat to him more about publishing as well, because he publishes a lot of amazing books, yours included, obviously, Hannes. Okay, well, this brings us towards the end of the show. I want to thank you very much, Hannes. But before I let you go, before you disappear back off to the Kalahari again, we have to ask the question. So we posed the question in the beginning that you get these images hanging on the wall of your humble dwelling, but we also give you the opportunity to tell us where that humble dwelling is going to be. Where are you going to photograph in perpetuity? Anywhere in the world? Over to you. Where is that going to be?
It's going to be in Africa, because I love Africa, and I'm from Africa and I'm African. So I think I love the arid regions. So anything in an arid area, it can be in the Kalahari, it can be in the Okavango, Namibia. I think at the end, it will probably be in the Kalahari.
There we go. We had to wait for it. I just thought I'd let you say it. We all knew. Everybody watching this knew you were going to say it. But I like the fact that you pretended you were thinking about other places. That's very good. Just keeping us all on tenterhooks as you went round all the other places and went, no, definitely the Kalahari. No, the Kalahari is very, very special. We often include it in our safaris, which do so Toby, Okavango, and then into the Kalahari, specifically because the subject matter is so different and so unique. And it's the same country, but could be a different country in essence, especially from Botswana. Hannes, I want to thank you very much for making time in your busy, busy schedule to come on the podcast. It's been great chatting to you. I hope that I get to run into you at some point. We seem to be ships in the night, and I never see you when you're around the Toby and everything. But we'll
get our timing right at some point.
At some point it will work. Anyway, it'd be lovely to see you again. But thank you very much for joining me on the show today, and have a good safari.
Thanks, man. And stay in touch.
Thank you very much for joining me on episode 5 of the Pangolin podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you also for the brilliant suggestions on who else to interview. Rest assured, we are busy tracking them all down and we will feature them soon. Please take a moment to leave a comment or write us a review in the comments. Your feedback means a great deal to us and helps us to continue to improve and grow the channel. And while you're there, give us a thumbs up because the algorithm likes that. Finally, don't forget to sign up to the Pangolin Photo Safari's Friday Focus newsletter. You can do that by heading over to pangolinphoto.com or scan the QR code on your screen now. I look forward to seeing you on a Pangolin Photo Safari soon, and that's all that's left for me to say is that the Pangolin podcast was hosted by me, Toby Jermin, and produced and edited by Bella Falk.